Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprint. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, even throughout the summer, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, because this is a message, a conversation that you probably are not getting in the mainstream media. So we need you to like, we need you to comment, we need you to subscribe and share this program. Of course, you can download it and listen to it in your convenience on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, you name it, it is out there. Despite being the summer, it is beautiful weather in most parts of the country. There is a lot of issues going on, around the country, and we're going to bring in a good friend of the show, the Member of Parliament for Calgary Forest Lawn, the finance critic, and also the host of the popular podcast, All That Jazz. Welcome, Jazz Raz Halan. Thanks very much for coming on.
Jamie, thanks for having me again on your world famous The Blueprint. The last time I was on, I had two people even contact me from India saying, "Hey, we saw you on The Blueprint," and so I think you might have some new followers from then.
Look at that! All right, we are growing this not just nationally but globally. Excellent.
That's
I
right.
love that. The more, the merrier. That would be great. I think it was. People are hungry for this message as well. I think it's a message that is going across the world that there are some issues here in Canada, and one of it is the inflation rate. It just keeps going up. Life is not getting easier for the majority of Canadians, and not only that, I know you've been traveling across the country. Our leader Pierre Poilievre has as well, and the number one thing that I know I get when I talk to people is life is not getting any easier.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, just inflation has struck once again, is what we're seeing. It was only a few weeks ago where Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland were doing victory laps that they were taking credit for inflation coming down. And it was only a few weeks later when they were proven wrong once again, as inflation went up just last week. This means the cost of everything is still going up, on top of their high taxes, on top of their high deficits, which are causing these interest rate increases, and the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating going up because of their failed carbon tax. And you're right, we've all been traveling all across the country. Our leader, Pierre Poilievre, has been everywhere. He's the most active. And you can just feel the pain everywhere you go. I'll give a quick example of how bad this high deficit, high tax government, the Liberal and NDP, are having a negative impact on Canadians. I just met a single mother last week. She was from Pakistan, mother of three, who moved out of her abusive relationship years ago. And just recently, because of Trudeau's rate hikes, the Bank of Canada had to increase its rates, as we know, over the last 2 years, the most rate hikes we've seen in the last 20 years. Because of those rate hikes, her rent went up by $600. And unfortunately, because of the rent situation, she had to move back in with her abusive ex-husband just so she could afford to feed her kids and keep a roof over their head. And these are some of the decisions people are having to make out there, let alone people aren't able to buy the nutritious food that they used to be able to because they're having to make different decisions. All because of things like the carbon tax, which keep going up, and things like the inflation rate that we're seeing in Canada. So all these things are affecting people's day-to-day lives, and there's a lot of pain out there, and this is all caused because of the bad policies of this Liberal NDP government.
We'll come back to the issue of rents and mortgages going up because I think that's very important. But something you said right at the beginning, I want to go over a bit because to look at the situation we are in now, we have to remember how we got here. And Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, and Justin Trudeau, you're right, they did not shy away from any media cameras or any microphones and took a bit of a victory lap. It didn't mean inflation had actually stopped going up or the prices have started to go down. It means the inflation rate wasn't going up as much. It was still going up, but not as much as they had thought or predicted or anything. But for the longest time, we were told that inflation was a global phenomenon. There's nothing they can do here domestically to fix it. But yet, when it did not go up as much as they thought, they took a victory lap. So how is that actually possible?
Well, I think you're right. We should identify, how did we get here in the first place? Well, Justin Trudeau's promise when he became prime minister was he wouldn't run deficits over $10 billion. This is the same guy that said the budget would balance itself. And what did he do before the pandemic? He had already put $100 billion of debt onto Canadians before the pandemic, and then he put a $500 billion more of debt onto Canadians during the pandemic. 40% of that spending had nothing to do with the pandemic itself, and we saw wasteful spending, like giving $54 million on a Arrive scam app that didn't work, that didn't do anything, that could have cost $250,000. They're paying $22 billion to consultants because the ministers are too incompetent and not doing their jobs properly. These are the kind of wasteful spending that we're seeing that drove up inflation in the first place. And you know what? Don't take conservatives' word for it that the Liberal government is the reason why there's inflation. Let's look back at former finance ministers and the current one. Former Finance Minister John Manley said the situation today in Canada, and this is a former Liberal Finance Minister, John Manley, said today's situation is the government's deficits are like the government having their foot on the gas. And the Bank of Canada, who is trying to counter that inflation, has a foot on the brake by interest rate hikes. Both things are happening at the same time, and the engine is going to blow at some point. And that engine is going to be on the taxpayer. When things blow, taxpayer gets left with the debt to pay. Former Finance Minister Bill Morneau, the one that is no more, so we call him Bill No More. He also said that during the pandemic, he admitted the government spent too much for too long. And that is another reason why we're in the situation we're in today. Even current Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland admitted that deficits fuel inflation. And after she said that, what did she do? She threw a $60 billion jerry can of fuel on the inflationary fire that she started with her failed budget just a few months ago. And all of these things are inflationary. And even a potential future Liberal leader candidate, Mark Carney, admits that the inflation we're seeing today is homegrown. All these things are combined, and it's the taxpayer that's having to pay higher grocery prices, higher fuel prices, and higher prices when it comes to home heating. And we're not seeing the cost of anything going down. All of this spending has also made mortgages double, rents double. It now takes double the cost just to save up for a down payment on a house. You used to be able to pay off a house in 25 years of your mortgage, but under Trudeau, it takes 25 years just to save up for a down payment in a place like Toronto. This is 8 years of Justin Trudeau, and life has not gotten easier or any more expensive under Trudeau. This is his track record.
And the deficit spending just continues, despite the economy being, let's say, the economy is going well. There are more jobs than positions to fill them. There is the ability for people to get ahead now. However, any raises they get, their savings are being devoured by the fact that the cost of living is going up. And so a dollar is not a dollar that it once was. Not, it wasn't that long ago, right? That everything seemed normal, and Justin Trudeau went to town.
Absolutely. Look, people's disposable income is being stretched out. There's barely any money left for them at the end of the day. And why? Because housing costs have doubled. So more of their paycheck is going towards housing. When you implement a carbon tax, which you're taxing the farmer that's making the food, taxing the truck driver that's transporting the food, and taxing the companies that are selling the food just for storing it, of course, at the end of the day, that's going to make the price of food go up. So everything is being stretched. People's paychecks are being stretched out. We're seeing food bank usage of Canadians in the millions per month. We're seeing 1 in 5 Canadians having to skip meals. This isn't the Canada that me and my family came to when we first immigrated here. But this is Justin Trudeau's Canada. And what's happening today? We're seeing more and more people suffering, making decisions that they never had to make before. These deficits are making life more expensive, and things are just getting worse. And we also have a shortage in housing supply because of government gatekeepers that Justin Trudeau keeps fueling more and more into the municipalities without any outcomes. And so when you look at rents have doubled as well under Trudeau. All these problems are caused because we have a federal government supported by the NDP that is not taking housing or this affordability crisis serious, but actually fueling it even more. This is the track record again of Justin Trudeau, who thinks budgets will balance themselves. That also says housing isn't a federal issue. It's not one of his primary issues. This is how out of touch they are. And again, for them to do victory laps last month is just a slap in the face to Canadians that are already suffering.
So the government, as we all know, has basically three ways to get the money they spend. They can tax, borrow, or print. We've seen a combination of all of them over the last few years, which is driving up the cost of inflation. We had the Bank of Canada trying to fix that. The other way to bring down inflation is to actually grow the economy. And we know that this government is having problems with that. Mexico is now the United States' largest trading partner, if you can actually believe that. We also have the three sectors that are hurting in terms of their ability to bring supply to meet the demand, and that is the energy sector. Well, we know Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, another piece of legislation, has really hurt our natural resources sector, whether it be the lumber industry, oil and gas, or even mining has been hampered by this. We see farmers, you just mentioned, Jazz. We talked about the agriculture industry wanting to bring down the cost of food. Well, we need to add more supply to that food, but yet we seem to be losing farmers left, right, and center, mostly because the cost of doing business is getting so out of control, they can't handle that. And the housing, of course. The housing minister was supposed to bring down the cost of housing. It's only gone up. So they actually only sparked the demand, but actually did not address the supply side. Like, how unbelievably brutal is all of this? And it's unfortunate because, as you said, it's the regular people that have to be hit the hardest.
Absolutely. Look, you've identified many different issues and how they've all been at the expense of Canadians, literally. And when we look at the growth rate in Canada, even in the Liberals' their own budget, they admit that they have the worst growth rate since the Great Depression in the 30s. But on top of that, Canada will have the worst growth rate in all developed nations. This is another reason why people are not investing in Canada. Investment is fleeing from here. There's two reasons, main reasons, when we talk to the any type of industry, why they don't want to invest more in Canada. Number one, there's too much government regulation, too much red tape, too much bureaucracy. Number two, economic uncertainty, which is also caused because of the failed ideology of this government. You've identified energy, and I come from Alberta, our proud province that is resource rich, and we want to be able to make more, sell more. We want to be able to help the world. But because of the ideology of this government, with bills just like Bill C-69, the No New Pipeline bill, nothing can get built in this country. Canada could be the world leader when it comes to climate change, when it comes to clean energy, when it comes to renewable energy, and all different forms of energy. But because of the ideology of this failed Liberal NDP government, nothing can get built here. If you want to build a mine, good luck. You won't be able to. If you want to make more pipelines, good luck. You won't be able to. Germany literally came here asking for our low carbon energy, our LNG. Justin Trudeau said there was no business case for it. So what did they do? Germany, first of all, turned around to Qatar, that doesn't have as many environmental regulations as Canada does, and human rights. They have human rights violations on inside their country. They got their product from them, and they have high carbon that emits into the atmosphere. On top of that, Germany took the step of making its own terminal. Within 197 days, they were able to create their own terminal. Canada is in 64th when it comes to permitting. And that is also a hindrance put in place by this government, so nothing can get built here. If Canada wants to be a world leader in bringing down world global emissions, we should be able to provide our low carbon energy to other places in the world, and we can put a chokehold on dictators around the world that are now selling to places like Europe and other places. We could replace that dirty energy with our clean, responsible, low carbon energy. But again, it's this ideology of this government that wants to solve the climate issue with taxes and not technology, like what our leader has in place, where we will solve this issue with technology and not taxes. Because at the end of the day, Canadians are paying more and more into this failed carbon tax, which we got a second carbon tax on July the 1st. Emissions haven't gone down. Our economy has not grown. Jobs have not grown in here, in those sectors. And on top of that, the Liberals have not met a single emission reduction target that they set for themselves. So when we talk about investment overall, nothing is being invested in Canada because of all these regulations that the government put into place. So of course, other countries are going to turn to their allies and not look at Canada as a place where they can either invest or sell to because we're just not a good trading partner anymore.
One of the biggest growth areas in the economy, and you know this, Jazz, but and we've talked about it many times in this country or in the show, is the size of government. Most jobs were created by government coming out of the pandemic, and as we all know, the biggest pollutant to an organic economy is government itself. So you're building the kind of the roadblocks to the path forward to growing the economy even more burdensome than it already is, and capital is just flowing elsewhere because it will take the path of least resistance. Of course, you will, and we have not made this country investor friendly at all.
Absolutely. Look, during the pandemic, the government was saying, we've created this many jobs, we've created this many jobs. But what they weren't telling people were that more than 80% of those jobs were created in the public sector, taxpayer funded jobs. Now, it would be one thing to say that we had to increase our services for Canadians and actually deliver on those. But what did we see? We see huge immigration backlogs. We see massive growth inside of, manpower inside of immigration, but we also see the biggest backlog in Canadian history in immigration with 2.1 million. We saw our passports a complete disaster last year. Our airports are still a complete mess. This is a government that's spending $21 billion dollars on public service, $22 billion dollars on consultants, with some of the worst outcomes for Canadians, with some of the worst services for Canadians. Canadians deserve to have better services. If they were going to spend that much, Canadians should have seen a better outcome in their lives. Not only have their lives gotten more expensive, but government services have gone down when it comes to being able to provide customer service for people. So this government is failing on all sides. And we need a better growth environment so we can create more good jobs. We can create a better outcome for people that actually want to move here. Today, under Justin Trudeau, 1 in 5 newcomers are thinking about packing up and going back to where they came from. Number one issue, cost of living. Number two, it's because their credentials are not being recognized, which could also help our economy and our healthcare system. And that's why, under a peer poly of government, we're going to bring in a national Blue Seal program where if your credentials are recognized and you can pass a test within 60 days of the field that you want to practice in, you will be able to practice in that field. That way we can get more of our brilliant immigrants into engineering jobs, into trades jobs, into being doctors and nurses, so that we can have less of a pressure on our healthcare system. That is what we were going to do to solve some of these issues, on top of reducing the deficit so we can bring down those mortgage rates and bringing the cost of living down. And we're going to axe the carbon tax so that more and more people want to come to Canada, because as we identified in the beginning of this podcast, there are people in Canada, or in places like India that we know, that don't see Canada as the gold standard of where people want to move anymore. And it's because everyone around the world is recognizing our crime is up in Canada, cost of living is up in Canada. Good luck for dream of home ownership in Canada. Canada is not seen as the gold standard that it once used to be because of 8 years of Justin Trudeau.
And it's until we get this labor shortage issue dealt with, the cost of housing, that's going to be a tough one to tackle, mostly because of, you mentioned, the gatekeepers stopping development from happening, but also the fact, and we learned this last week with Scott Aitchison, our housing critic, is also that we're going to lose 4 skilled tradespeople for every one that we're bringing in the next few years. So if you think it's tough to get a plumber, electrician, a roofer, a cabinet maker, etc., now, in a few more years, it's going to get even worse. And how are we going to build the housing stock, or really anything that we need, if we're losing all that talent due to retirement? So we need to accelerate the fact that we need to get people back into the trades ASAP.
I agree. Look, I come from the construction industry. I was a home builder, and the trades are very close to my heart. We need to make sure that we get the regulations out of the way. We can, you have these out of touch ministers. The current housing minister, who was the former immigration minister, is now blaming international students. But he's the one who set the targets in the first place. And now he's blaming these international students who come here to not only make a better life for themselves, but contribute to Canada, to make Canada the beautiful country that it is. And now he's blaming them
The
after he's
Liberals
the one
only take credit when it's good. Inflation's gone
That's
down
right.
for that 1 month. Credit.
That's right.
Immigration department's a mess. It's got to be the foreign students. Like it's
It's their
unbelievable.
fault. And on top of that, now you have the new immigration minister who's saying we can't build more houses without immigrants. So what? Now they're saying that that's all immigrants are good for, to build houses here. What these guys are completely out of touch, and it's their failed policies. And like you said, they're always blaming someone else. If they were actually serious about this, they would recognize that even under their watch, the labor that comes for trades has gone down over the years. We see housing
Hmm.
starts down over the years, yet we're going to have 500,000 new people coming into the country. What we need is the conservative plan to help increase housing supply. I've already identified our national Blue Seal program for our immigrants so that they can practice in the field that they want. But on top of that, for housing, what are we going to do? We're going to sell off 15% of the land that's owned by the federal government and buildings that are just sitting there, convert those into units so we can get more supply into the market. We're also going to incentivize municipalities who for many years under Trudeau have been getting millions and billions of dollars without any proper outcomes. We want 15% of permitting to increase, and we're going to do that by incentivizing. You do that as a municipality, you're going to get a bonus. You don't do that, unfortunately, you're going to get fined. We need to incentivize. I recently met with the London Home Builders Association who are talking about permitting that sometimes takes years. We need to
Yep.
fix that so that we can get more built, more shovels into the ground. We also want for any federally owned transit, we want to see high density built around that. And why? For our seniors, for our low income Canadians, we want to see for newcomers, those with accessibility issues, so that they're able to get accessibility to transit so that they can get around and save a cost on transportation. This is the conservative plan. We have a plan, and we know that in the next election, Canadians are going to be looking at us to saying these are the kind of options that they want to see.
And some fiscal sanity back in Ottawa.
Hear, hear.
Well, Jazz, as you know, the guests always get the last word, so the floor is yours.
Once again, I'm so honored that I get to join this world famous The Blueprint. Jamie, look, like we said, us as a team led by our next Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre, have been traveling all across the country, talking to Canadians, hearing about the pain that the last 8 years has caused because of Justin Trudeau and the NDP coalition that they have. But I want to remind everyone watching that hope is on the way. Under a Pierre Poilievre government, we're going to turn that hurt into hope. We're going to bring home lower prices by getting rid of the carbon tax. We're going to bring home stronger paychecks by making sure that we're getting rid of the things like the carbon tax, and we're lowering the deficit and lowering people's taxes. We're going to bring home safer streets, and we're going to do that by implementing stronger laws for those repeat crime, those offenders that committed repeat offenders. We're also going to bring home more freedom. We see a freedom under attack under this country, like Bill C-18, where you can't even share the undevastating news that's all across our country right now with wildfires because of this Bill C-18. Scrap that and Bill C-11 to make sure we bring home freedom once again. These are the plans, and we're also, the most important, we're going to bring home more homes that people can actually afford with some of the things that I discussed. This is what we're going to see under Pierre Poilievre government, under a strong, conservative, fiscally responsible government in the next election.
I love it. Thank you so much. I know you're busy, so I do appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure going back and forth with you.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, Jazraz Hillan, the finance critic, the member of parliament for Calgary Forest Hill, and the host of All That Jazz podcast. We appreciate his time. We appreciate yours as well. Even throughout the summer, we've got new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Don't forget, download it. Tell your friends about it too. Platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.